Many women need to respect their husbands. And I hear it on a constant basis. My husband doesn't say it about Torah on Shabbos. It bothers them. They go to schools, and just because you met them in town doesn't mean that everything in the head is fried. Sometimes they do want to respect their husbands. And they want to hear you prepare something, and they want to hear you say something. And I have a chavrus shop with a guy once a week who I help him and prepare for him so he has something to say by the table because his wife was very, very, very upset with him. You come to the Shabbos table and you have nothing to say on the parsha. So it's important while we're in yeshiva. Yeshiva is not just to train you. No, yeshiva is to train you in all aspects in your life. To lead a happy and healthy part of life. And it's very important that you should sometimes sit down. You guys are going to get engaged. There's such a thing as a vart. You know, we're far from it. Nobody says that anymore because you get sung in. But it's very important that you're able to give over something. Give over something that you've been inspired by. Give over to your children. We have a mitzvah in the Torah. Pesach by night. One day you're going to be sitting there. You're going to be the Zaidi. You're going to be the Tati. You're going to be the Abba. And you're going to have to be able to say it over. You're going to be the Saba. Whatever it is. And you're going to have to say over something. So we worked a lot on it. We prepared it together. He did a lot, much more on his own than I helped him with. And I hope you enjoy and all take this opportunity.
Wow.
This is not a shir, it's a story time.
Yeah.
Don't say
The
that.
story is about the Baba Salli. His real name is abuchatzira. The Baba Salli's family name and how it was changed and now known as abuchatzira. This story took place around 400 years ago. A long time ago.
Louder.
Stand up, baby.
Good sis.
Stand up.
Oh yeah.
Real speaker, stand up.
The night descended upon Jerusalem. The narrow streets and long since emptied of pedestrians and the markets had become deserted. The residents were huddled into their small, low-domed houses in one place. However, there was a commotion. Something interesting was taking place. This site was the central synagogue and the courtyard surrounding it. It seemed like everyone was there: rabbis, kol guys, common folk. The community itself numbered no more than a few dozen families, but the tension was rife.
Okay.
By the look on people's faces, something momentous was about to happen that evening. When the Jerusalem community was mainly composed of kol guys, rabbis, tzaddikim, and the holy people who lived there, who lived in poverty and deprivation, the unifying thread was their consuming love for the holy city and the holy site of the Beis Hamikdash. They were prepared to live a life of suffering, hunger, persecution at the hands of their hostile neighbors for the privilege of being close to Shekhinah in Jerusalem and by the Western Wall, the focus of the prayers of the Jews throughout the world at the times. The main source of money was sent from all the rich Jews from the surrounding areas, and they had to send the guy out.
To where? To Jerusalem?
In Jerusalem.
That's people would send it to.
All around Jerusalem. They would send a guy to go collect money from all the rich people in the surrounding Jewish communities. And
They would support
all the
Jews.
rich people would want to be part of the mitzvah of helping the people that want to learn all day. The money that reached Jerusalem, that was collected, was divided among all the people. Wasn't a lot of money, it was enough to survive. During the years of drought, when food became even ever scarcer and the cost of bread and even water escalated, Then those who sufficed with little during normal times were unable to subsist. Under such circumstances, a special effort had to be made to ease the people's plight, lest the people starve to death. During these difficult times, the community would send a shliach, a messenger, to the Jewish communities abroad to describe the dire situation and collect money to help the starving Jerusalemite families. The journey was fraught with risk and required great effort. It meant a long separation from a family, an exhausting trip, uncomfortable, horse-drawn wagons, a tedious sea voyage. Every step of the way was dangerous. There could be robbers.
I hear cracking.
Stop eating seeds.
Stop eating seeds. Every step of the way was dangerous. There could be robbers that could rob you, take your horses, take your wagon, take your luggage. Even on the way back, it was dangerous because you had all the money and people could rob you, and there's no point of going on the trip. For all these reasons, it was difficult to find a suitable candidate for the mission. One who was at the same time capable of presenting the plight of his brothers to their counterparts in many communities outside of Eretz Yisrael, and also willing to undertake the rigors of such a long, difficult journey. When the situation came to head, a drawing would take place among the heads of families to see who would go.
What do you mean
This-
drawing? What was it?
They would have like a bowl with all the fathers' names in it of all the families. They would pick out one, and
Whoever won the lottery got it.
exactly.
What did he get?
Huh?
He got $1 billion.
No, whoever's name got picked out, he was the guy that had to go, even though he had to take the risk of traveling there and back. No, stop lying.
It's out of breath.
This then was the reason for the.
Finish.
This then was the reason for an intention visible on the faces of those gathered in the big Knesset. They had been summoned to participate in the decisive drawing of lots. Each man whispered a silent prayer that he not be chosen on the one hand, and that a suitable one be designated in his stead. The community needed a person who would be able to carry out the vital mission successfully, so that all would be able to breathe free. The Chacham, or the leader of the community, arrived, and the room was plunged into expectant silence. In a moment, the shamash, the guy that would pick the paper, would draw the one decisive name out of the bowl by a committee which saw that all the families were represented without exception. The moment came and the shamash marched up to the Chacham's table, thrust his hand deep into the pile of notes, and fished up a small, carefully folded piece of paper. He handed it to the Chacham, and it said, "Rav Shmuel elbaz." The Chacham read in a hesitant, tremulous voice, "This is the man picked min hashamayim as designated for the formidable, hazardous mission of being the shliach mitzvah." Sighs of relief exploded from all sides. The people looked confused, almost desperate. Would Rav Shmuel be able to carry out the task satisfactorily and save the community from hunger? All nursed their doubts, for Rav Shmuel was a passive man, retiring and self-contained. It was difficult to judge the personality and talents of one who was introverted. It seemed as if the mission was doomed from the start. One thing was clear: no one that was present was prepared to change places with Rav Shmuel. No one even dared suggest another try at the lottery. What was done was done. The only one who accepted the verdict of equanimity was Rav Shmuel himself. Knowing that he would have to set out already on the morrow journey,
Tomorrow.
he went up to the Chacham to seek his blessing. Then he turned homeward, followed by a mournful great whatever people saying good luck and whatever.
Wishing. I better wish them
Yeah,
goodbye.
everyone wishing him good luck. Sunrise came. Rav Shmuel had just finished Vasikin with the local minyan. He returned home to eat a simple breakfast before setting out on a long journey. The small bundle of his belongings lay waiting from the night before. When he had finished eating, he took an emotional leave on his family and left the city gates in a wagon headed for Jaffa Port. His first scheduled stop would be Constantinople, the capital of Great Ottoman Empire, which ruled much of Middle East, including Eretz Yisrael. There was a large Jewish community there, including many rich Jews who were always glad to help their Jerusalem brothers in times of distress. After a tiring journey, Rav Shmuel reached the port of Jaffa and found, to his joy, a ship about to leave for Constantinople. That very day, his joy was dispelled by knowledge that he would have to pay a large fee to board it, but he had no money at all.
What do you do?
I'm just going to say something before I say the next thing. This is coming from one of the holiest people in Jerusalem, that he was willing to get down on his knees for everybody. Listen to this. Nevertheless, Rav Shmuel approached the captain confidently and asked for a free passage in exchange for labor. He volunteered to clean the decks, serve the other passengers, and do any work that was asked of him. The Arab captain looked disdainfully down his nose at the poor man and spat out that he had no need for old lazy workers. He added that he had no room on board for loafers and freeloaders. Rav Shmuel's fervent pleas made no dent in the captain's attitude. The ship cast off, leaving Rav Shmuel behind on the shore, looking forlorn. The ship spread its wide sails, and a light breeze puffed them out, blowing it gently out of the harbor. Rav Shmuel took his satchel, took out his small woven mat upon which he sat on, spread it out on the seashore. He laid his bundle on it and his bags. He sat down in the center, opened his safer in his hand, as comfortable as you please, and the mat started floating. It started following the boat.
This is where Aladdin comes from.
Listen,
The mat followed
That's true.
smoothly in the wake of the ship as its passenger, Rav Shmuel, nonchalantly studied the open book before him, as if he were in comfort of his own home.
Wow.
The passengers crowded to the starboard side of the ship, their eyes round with wonder. The further out of the ship sailed, the greater was the wonder, for the little mat continued valiantly behind it, bearing its passenger along. At the passengers' cries of astonishment, all the sailors rushed to the railing. Even the captain left the wheel to see what the commotion was all about. There they saw the very man who had accused of being a loafer and freeloader calmly seated upon a floor mat, as if there was nothing at all unusual about it.
Wow.
The expression of scorn that had filled the captain's face when he had turned the rabbi away totally disappeared and was replaced with deep shame and remorse. He felt the urge to make amends for his rudeness. Leaning over the railing of the deck, he cried out sincerely to Rav Shmuel, "Forgive me for having turned you away. I am ashamed of myself, for I see that you are a holy man. Let me lower a rope to you and haul you up into the ship. It will be a great honor to have you aboard my ship." Rav Shmuel refused. If you rejected me as a deckhand on your ship, I will not travel as a passenger either. I am quite comfortable like this, and I will not leave my mat until we reach Constantinople. All of the captain's pleadings were of no avail to Rav Shmuel. Rav Shmuel remained on his mat until the ship entered the port of Constantinople. The captain and his passengers were certain that once they landed, they would be able to go over to Rav Shmuel and receive his blessing. Rav Shmuel took advantage of the hustle and bustle at the port to slip away quickly. Folding up his mat, he put it together with other belongings and walked off. With sure and hurried steps, he turned towards the Jewish quarter, murmuring all the while a silent prayer, to Hashem, and for having delivered him safely to these shores. He now asked Hashem to continue to show his favor for granting him success in his rescue mission for the sake of his suffering brothers in Jerusalem. Thinking the matter over, Rav Shmuel decided to present himself as a simple money collector on behalf of his community. Meanwhile, the news of the marvelous traveler had already spread throughout the city, and people were eager to see the Jew who had crossed the sea from Jaffa to Constantinople abroad, a simple woven mat. They talked of nothing else. As Rav Shmuel set a foot on the threshold of the Beit Knesset, he was identified as the wondrous stranger. People crowded about him in awe, and he was treated as befit a holy man who had came from the Holy Land. And Rav Shmuel explained why he had come. People lent him their full attention. The Parnasim of the community agreed that it was not fitting to allow Rav Shmuel to go out from one house to another to collect money. They decided to undertake to upheal themselves in the steed and save him time and trouble. This left Rav Shmuel free to sit in the Beit Knesset and devote all his time to study. After only a few days, a large sum had been collected, far more than he expected, and he was able to return to Jerusalem.
How do you get back?
Did he go eat the mat again?
Upon
Better use the mat.
he paid a visit to the. Upon arrival, he paid a visit to the Chacham to deliver the money he had raised. Upon seeing Rav Shmuel enter the room, the rabbi thought that he had come to report the failure of the mission. Otherwise, how could he have returned so quickly? But when he saw the heavy bundle of gold and silver which Rav Shmuel laid upon the table, the fruits of his efforts, he was overwhelmed. Rav Shmuel told him briefly about his trip and left to go back home, go to his home, his family, and his precious farm. The improvised people of Jerusalem were able to breathe free and they rejoiced. The only one who was dissatisfied was Rav Shmuel himself, for as soon as word leaked out of his miraculous voyage, he became the center of attention, a celebrity. No longer did people see a different, reserved man. Now he was considered a holy saint, and people sought him out for blessings and advice. He didn't want the attention. He didn't like the attention. He could no longer pretend to be a simple fellow as before. When all attention became too much for Rav Shmuel, he packed his things and moved away in order to be alone once more and serve Hashem. Serve Hashem in the humble fashion of yore.
Of years before.
Years before. He went to Damascus and settled in the nearby village of Guvar in order to be near the great Kabbalist Rav Chaim Vital, Talmud of the Ari HaKodesh. Here at last he could live in solitude and anonymity and devote himself entirely to the study of Torah. Rav Shmuel spent the rest of his days thus in seclusion until he died. Rav Shmuel died in Guvar and was buried in the very courtyard where he had lived. His grave is a holy site to this very day and attracts large numbers of Jews to come daven by. Jerusalemites, grateful to Rav Shmuel elbaz for his help, remembered him fondly and forever referred to him as Rav Shmuel abuchatzira to commemorate his famous sea voyage upon the mat, which is called Chatzira in Arabic. And this is the story of how the name abuchatzira was changed from elbaz to abuchatzira now, which is the Baba Salli's original name.
Wait, Baba Salli is who? Son of
Baba Salli is
no,
great.
Well, many years after.
Yeah, this is like 400 years ago.
That's so good.
So this is your great grandfather? Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yo, man. Bring it in, baby.
Oh yeah.
Yo,
That's like what you would say, my nigga.
wait, you see who gets the first mat?
My nigga.
Who gets the first ride on the mat? You got the mat? Yeah, tell me a second. Who gets
Telling you, it's from Aladdin.
That's what it stole it from.
Yeah.
They have a mat stuff.
Friday night davening here in the
He's a real rubber. He doesn't even look at the mirror. That's not you know, I want to get back to my box.
Friday night eating, Friday night davening here in Yeshiva.
Shout out for the video, guys.